The Alpha King's Wolfless son changed forever, after an Omega Maid revealed a hidden secret. Prince Kaelan Voss stood at the edge of the training field, watching the other young wolves of the Blackthorn Pack shift with ease. One moment they were tall, strong young men and women, and the next, sleek wolves bounded across the grass, howling with joy. Kaelan watched in silence, his jaw tight, his hands clenched behind his back. He had stood in this same spot every year since he turned 16, waiting for something that never came. He had no wolf. It was the deepest secret of the Blackthorn royal family, hidden behind locked doors and whispered warnings. King Draven, ruler of the most powerful pack in the region, had a son who could not shift. No fang, no fur, no beast within him at all. Just a man, fully human, born into a world that worshipped strength above everything else. The king had done everything he could to hide it. Official records were quietly changed. Servants who asked too many questions were reassigned to distant villages. Kaelan was trained harder than any other heir in pack history, taught to fight with swords and strategy instead of claws and teeth, so that no one would notice what he lacked. By the time he turned 19, Kaelan had become one of the finest fighters in the kingdom, but the achievement brought him no comfort. Every victory only reminded him of the truth he could not change. He grew distant from almost everyone around him. He trusted no one completely, not the nobles who smiled too widely in his presence, not the guards who watched him a little too closely, and certainly not his father, who looked at him sometimes with something close to disappointment. The only person in the entire castle who never seemed to fear him, judge him, or whisper about him was a quiet maid named Wren. Wren had been assigned to the prince's chambers 2 years earlier. She was an Omega, the lowest rank in pack hierarchy, expected to remain humble, quiet, and unnoticed. She followed those rules perfectly in front of others, but when she was alone with Kaelan, something in her shifted. She spoke to him plainly, without the nervous flattery most people used. She never asked him why he avoided the shifting ceremonies. She never gossiped with the other staff about the prince's strange habits. At first, Kaelan barely noticed her. She was simply part of the furniture of his daily life, someone who brought his meals, tidied his room, and disappeared quietly into the halls. But over time, small moments built between them. A warm cup of tea appeared on difficult nights without him ever asking for it. A soft word of encouragement was offered after a brutal training session, when no one else dared to speak to him at all. Once, when he sat alone in his study long after midnight, unable to sleep, Wren had simply lit a second candle and sat in the corner with her sewing, saying nothing, just keeping him company in his silence. Kaelan told himself it meant nothing. He was a prince, she was a maid. Their lives were built on different levels of the world, and nothing more than simple kindness could exist between them. Still, he found himself looking forward to the moments she was near, more than he wanted to admit. Everything changed on the night of the treaty meeting. King Draven had invited representatives from the Ashwood Pack, a rival territory that had been at odds with Blackthorn for years, to discuss a fragile peace agreement. The meeting was held in the castle's grand hall, filled with important guests, advisors, and guards standing along every wall. Kaelan was required to attend, standing beside his father as the heir to the throne, even though he hated these gatherings more than almost anything else. The negotiations were tense from the start. Old wounds between the two packs ran deep, and several Ashwood representatives made it clear they did not trust the Blackthorn King's intentions. Halfway through the evening, a disturbance broke out near the entrance of the hall. Shouts rang through the corridor outside, followed by the sound of guards rushing into position. Someone had attempted to disrupt the meeting, hoping to use the chaos to harm the king and destroy any chance of peace between the packs. In the panic that followed, the hall dissolved into confusion. Guests scattered, guards moved to protect the king, and in the middle of it all, Kaelan found himself pulled by instinct toward his father's side, determined to help however he could, even without a wolf to defend himself. It was Wren who reached him first. She had been standing near the side entrance, delivering refreshments to the staff preparing the evening meal, when the disturbance began. Without thinking, she rushed toward Kaelan, pulling him back from a dangerous part of the hall, just as a section of the room became unsafe. Her movements were sharp, controlled, and far too skilled for a simple maid. She positioned herself instinctively, shielding him with practiced precision, the kind of reaction that came only from training, not from years spent carrying tea trays and folding linens. Kaelan stared at her in stunned silence as the chaos settled and guards regained control of the hall. "Wren," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did you do that?" For a long moment, she said nothing. Her eyes, usually calm and guarded, were wide with the realization that she had revealed far more about herself than she ever intended. Later that night, after the hall had been cleared and the king's safety confirmed, Kaelan found Wren standing alone on the castle's quiet balcony, staring out at the dark hills beyond the walls. He approached slowly, giving her space, but his question from earlier still hung between them. "You're not just a maid," he said gently. "Tell me the truth." Wren closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering the courage she had buried for years. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "My real name is not Wren," she admitted. "I was born into the Ashwood royal line. My family ruled before a violent purge tore our pack apart years ago. I was only a child when it happened. I was smuggled out and hidden among the Blackthorn staff, raised to blend in, trained quietly in self-defense by those who protected me, all so that no one would ever discover who I truly was." Kaelan listened in stunned silence, piecing together years of small details that suddenly made sense, her sharp instincts, her quiet strength, the way she never seemed to fully belong among the other staff despite her gentle manner. "Why are you telling me this now?" he asked. Wren turned to face him fully, her expression filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Because what happened tonight was not random," she said. "The people behind it are connected to the same forces that destroyed my family. And Kaelan, there is something else you need to know. Something about you." His chest tightened. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then continued. "I have heard whispers for years, fragments of old stories passed quietly among those who remember the conflict between our packs. There was a binding placed on the Blackthorn heir at birth, a curse meant to weaken your bloodline from within. That is why you have no wolf, Kaelan. It was never a flaw in you. It was something done to you." The words struck him harder than any blade ever could. For 19 years, he had believed himself broken, lesser, incomplete. Now, standing in the moonlight, with the truth finally spoken aloud, something inside him cracked open. "Can it be undone?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. He rarely allowed himself to show. Wren studied him carefully before answering. "The old stories say a curse like this can only be broken through true trust, a real bond formed between the one who carries the curse and someone connected to its origin. I did not understand what that meant until tonight, until I saw how you reacted, how you trusted me, even when everything in your world told you not to." In the days that followed, Kaelan and Wren worked together in secret, piecing together the truth behind the attack on the treaty meeting. They discovered that a hidden faction within both packs had been quietly working to keep tensions high, profiting from the conflict between Blackthorn and Ashwood for years. These individuals had been responsible for the original purge that destroyed Wren's family, and they were now determined to prevent any lasting peace, fearing it would expose their long history of manipulation. As Kaelan and Wren uncovered piece after piece of evidence, their bond deepened beyond anything either of them expected. He no longer saw her as simply a maid hiding behind a quiet smile. He saw her strength, her resilience, and the years of pain she had carried silently, while still choosing kindness toward those around her. She, in turn, saw past his cold exterior to the lonely young man who had spent his entire life believing he was not enough. The final confrontation came when the hidden faction made one last attempt to seize control, using the unresolved tension between the packs as cover for their plans. Wren, recognized by an old enemy of her family, found herself surrounded and in danger during a tense standoff in the castle's lower halls. Kaelan arrived just in time, standing firmly between her and those who sought to silence her once and for all. In that moment, fear gave way to something stronger inside him. He was not protecting her out of duty or obligation. He was protecting her because he trusted her completely. Because somewhere along their journey together, she had become the one person in his life he refused to lose. A bright warmth spread through his chest, unlike anything he had ever felt before. The curse that had bound him since birth finally shattered, not through violence or force, but through the simple, powerful choice to stand by someone he trusted with his whole heart. For the first time in his life, Kaelan felt his wolf surge forward, strong and steady, no longer hidden or suppressed. The transformation stunned everyone present. Guards lowered their weapons in shock. Wren stared at him with tears in her eyes, finally understanding the full weight of what their bond had accomplished. The remaining members of the hidden faction, faced with the sudden display of strength they never expected, were quickly subdued and brought before the king for justice. When King Draven learned the full truth, he was forced to face two realities at once. His son was no longer Wolfless, freed at last from a curse placed before he could even remember. And the quiet maid who had served his household faithfully for years was, in truth, the last surviving heir of the Ashwood royal line, someone who deserved far more respect and honor than the role she had been forced to hide behind. In the weeks that followed, peace between the Blackthorn and Ashwood packs was finally restored, built on a foundation far stronger than any treaty document. Kaelan stood before his father's court, no longer the quiet, uncertain prince who hid in the shadows of his own bloodline. He spoke with confidence, supported by the truth he had finally embraced. He did not simply announce Wren's true identity to the gathered nobles. He claimed her, openly and proudly, not as a servant of the castle, but as his chosen mate, the one person who had stood by him through his darkest uncertainty, and helped him discover the strength he never knew he carried. The wedding that followed was simple but meaningful, attended by members of both packs who had once seen each other only as enemies. As Kaelan looked at Wren standing beside him, he realized that everything he had once believed made him weak had actually led him to the greatest strength of his life. He was no longer the wolfless son hiding in his father's shadow. He was a future king who had learned that true power did not come from fangs or claws alone, but from trust, loyalty, and the courage to stand beside someone, even when the whole world expected him to stand alone. And as the two packs began a new chapter, built on honesty rather than fear, Kaelan understood that the greatest secret of his life had not been a weakness at all. It had simply been waiting for the right person to help him see the truth.